Parking is one of those things we only ever think about when we can't find a spot. But what if I told you that parking policy is so much more than just storing cars? It's actually one of the most powerful tools we have to shape our city's economy, its livability, and, well, its very soul. Today we're diving into Auckland's choice. What kind of city are we actually trying to build?
Okay, so let's just get right to the heart of it. When you boil it all down, this is the single most important question for any decision maker. Every policy you write, every square meter of land you zone, every single dollar you invest, it all answers this one question. Is our city a place to store private vehicles, or is it a platform for people to connect and thrive?
And you can see the two possible futures right here. On the left, you've got the city built around the car, these vast seas of parking. They're functional, I guess, for storage, but they create a quiet, disconnected landscape. And then on the right, you have a city that's built for people. It's alive, it's walkable, it's buzzing with economic energy. The choice between these two is what we're really talking about today. And this, right here, is the core dilemma for anyone in a leadership position. Urban space is our most finite, our most valuable resource. We can't make more of it. So how we choose to use it is a massive, high-stakes decision that's going to have consequences for generations to come.
This quote from the source material just frames the whole debate perfectly, doesn't it? It really forces us to look at the trade-offs head-on, because you can't have it both ways. A square meter that's dedicated to storing one car is a square meter that can't be a cafe, or a home, or a little park, or a bus lane. It's a choice.
All right, so first, let's really diagnose the problem by looking at the model that's dominated our cities for decades, the car-centric city. This whole model is built on one big assumption, that there will always be ample, cheap parking. And that assumption has some profound and often totally unseen consequences.
It leads to this phenomenon that urban planners call urban islands. And the idea is really simple, but the impact is huge. You could have two buildings that are just, say, 200 meters apart. But if they're separated by this giant, unwelcoming sea of asphalt, nobody's going to walk. The very fabric of the city gets torn apart, and it forces you right back into your car for even the shortest trip. And the scale of this is it's staggering. In a major center like Manukau, the source documents estimate that up to 45% of the land is dedicated solely to surface car parking. Think about that. Almost half of a city's prime real estate is just pavement, sitting there waiting for empty cars.
The financial cost is just as shocking. To build a single parking space can cost as much as $65,000. That is a massive amount of capital to lock into a piece of concrete that honestly generates very little economic return.
And here's the real kicker, the opportunity cost. 1 acre of surface parking provides exactly 0 housing units. 0. In a city that's facing a housing crisis, that's a statistic that should make every single one of us pause and think.
This creates this powerful feedback loop, a vicious cycle that is so hard to break. You build tons of parking, which makes driving the easiest option. All that driving leads to low-density sprawl. That sprawl makes public transport inefficient and way too expensive to run. And when your transit is bad, what happens? Everybody is forced to drive, which leads them to demand, you guessed it, more parking. It just feeds itself.
But there is another way. So let's look at what happens when we try to build a different kind of city. The vibrant, people-focused model. Now, this is not about banning cars. It's about creating a much better balance by letting the market actually do its job. And believe it or not, the toolkit for this is surprisingly simple. The evidence all points to two main policy levers. First, you manage the super valuable curbside space through proper pricing. And second, you get rid of these outdated rules that force developers to build way too much parking, whether they need it or not. And the difference between these two approaches? It's night and day. The old way, with these mandatory minimums, forces a huge oversupply of parking, which basically subsidizes driving and bundles the high cost of parking into everything we buy and rent. The new, market-led way lets the supply actually meet the demand. It frees up land for things we desperately need, like housing, and it makes everything cheaper by separating out the cost of parking. And if you want to talk economics, the case is crystal clear. Data shows that a single curbside space that's used for, say, a dining parklet can generate over $1,600 a day for local businesses. That same space used to store one car? About $950. We are leaving so much value on the table by dedicating our public space to private vehicle storage. So, the big question is, how do we get there? Well, this isn't just theory. Auckland actually has a really pragmatic, real-world plan to make this transition happen. It's a roadmap designed specifically for a large, diverse region.
Now, the key to Auckland's strategy, and what makes it so smart, is that it completely rejects a one-size-fits-all approach. Instead, it's a 10-year plan that tailors how parking is managed to the specific context of a neighborhood, all based on its access to public transport and what they call its readiness for change.
So let's break it down. Tier 3 is for our most connected areas. We're talking the city center, the major hubs with great transit. Here, the management is proactive. The goal is to shift all trips, not just commutes, to other modes of transport. And that means pricing parking to manage demand and taking back curb space for things that move way more people, like bus and bike lanes.
Next up is Tier 2. Think about town centers or mixed-use zones that have good, but maybe not rapid transit. Here, the approach is still proactive, but the focus is much more specific. It's all about tackling the inefficiency of long-stay commuter parking while making sure there's still turnover for shoppers and visitors to support those local businesses.
And finally, we have Tier 1. This covers areas with more limited transit options, like our lower-density suburbs. Now, this is key. The management style here is responsive, not proactive. Nothing changes unless a specific safety issue or a high-demand problem pops up. It's all about solving actual problems, not just imposing rules where they aren't needed. So, when you put it all together, what this tiered strategy really represents is a deliberate choice. It's a conscious decision about what kind of future we want to build for Auckland, one neighborhood at a time. And this quote from Councillor Chris Darby, man, it just hits home. Our most valuable public spaces, our main streets, are being used for the least productive purpose you can imagine, storing private vehicles. And the strategy basically argues that this is just an inefficient and, frankly, inequitable use of a shared asset.
And let's be absolutely clear about something. This is not a war on cars. It's a plan for choice. It's about creating a system that actually works better for everyone, including freight, tradespeople, and people who still need to drive, by making our whole transport network more efficient and our city more prosperous.
So at the end of the day, it all comes back to this. Every single square meter of our city represents a choice. Are we going to use it to store a stationary vehicle, or are we going to use it to build a more dynamic, more prosperous, and more connected city for people? The strategy is on the table. The choice is ours.